Join me every month for the inspiration to find your finish line. Good day, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Find Your Finish Line. I'm Mike Riley, and thank you very much for joining me today. My guest is someone who has had an amazing up and down, and up again life. You're going to be intrigued and I know inspired by his story. Before we get started with today's podcast, I'd like to thank my presenting sponsor, Pillar Performance. Pillar is a sports micronutrition company, and the easiest way to describe them is a hydration and carbohydrate products that will take you through to the finish line. Pillar's mission is to get athletes to the start line in the best condition ever, over and over again. I was introduced to the products back at Ironman New Zealand in 2021. I was a little bit of a naysayer because they told me their triple magnesium powder would help me sleep a lot better and deeper and recover after hard workouts. Well, I take it about 30 to 40 minutes before I go to bed, and I'm getting deeper sleep, less cramps, and quicker recovery from my next day's workout. And now that we're coming into the winter season, you've got to try their immune vitamin C to keep you healthy, to strengthen that immune system in the winter months coming ahead. So for my North America listeners, go to thefeed.com/pillar, enter finish line, that's the code finish line, and get 15% off. For my international listeners, go to pillarperformance.shop, enter the code finish line, and get 15% off on all your first time purchases. So thank you to Pillar. It's not a product I talk about, it's a product I take. My guest today is a person that has pushed himself through some serious tough times in life, in business, and in Ironman. And the best part is, as you'll hear, he's learned deeply from it. John Joseph is the former frontman for the hardcore punk band Cro-Mags out of New York City. Gosh, from 1981 to 2019. I'm going to talk about John about his drug addiction, his being a heroin mule, discovery of the healthy lifestyle, both physically and mentally. John's put together and authored 7 books, and his newest one we'll talk about, Destroying Monsters. And John finished Kona in 2016 and 17. John Joseph, welcome to Find Your Finish Line, buddy.
Wow, man. From one Irish American, John Joseph McGowan, to Mike Riley, thanks for having me, brother.
You got it, Mr. McGowan. I love that. By the way, my first question on my podcast every time is, what type of workout did you get in today?
I just did some myofascial release today, and I'm going to hit the gym later. So I split my time between New York and Florida. So I moved to Florida. I'm tired of the cold. So I do my big build when I get home Saturday I got Ironman Texas coming up in April. So, so basically I've been just up here hitting the gym, running. I put in a swim up at Asphalt Green, which I used to swim at all the time when I lived here full time. But it's you got to do something every day. You know how it is.
Yeah, you've got doing the hard things makes the soft things even better when you enjoy them.
Yes, sir.
It's interesting because I would have thought today, we're recording this the day after the World Series.
Yeah.
And usually you wear a New York hat. Now, how come you aren't touting the Yankees hat?
Listen. After what they did in that inning, giving up 5 runs, I mean, it was,
That's a tough one.
I got a lot of friends in LA, so I'm happy for them. The Yankees blew it. But, I'm born and raised New Yorker. They always been my team, so whatever. I don't get all crazy about it, but I say, when you do that kind of, you drop the ball pretty big,
Yeah, that was a tough one.
I mean, literally, Mike. Aaron. So, I'm not too pleased with them guys,
It's funny. My son played a lot of baseball, played a little minor league baseball, and he said the good thing about baseball is you can have a bad at bat, you can drop a ball and then redeem yourself until it's the last game of the season. That's
Yeah,
it. Then it's all until spring training, for goodness sakes. Oh,
yeah, exactly. And that's not. I mean, if the Dodgers would have beat him on runs and stuff like that, but they didn't. They beat him from defensive errors on the part of the Yankees. I mean, the mistakes that they made, I was just like,
it was tough. It was
yeah,
tough.
but whatever. It is what it is. I don't let it control my life. I got so much going on that if they would have won, great. But they had a, it was funny because the team they were. I forget what year the Red Sox. My wife is from Worcester, so
Oh, okay.
she's from Massachusetts. And the year that they came back from down 0-3 to win 4 games in a row to beat the Yankees in the World Series, I was happy for the Red Sox. I was like, you know what? When you play like that, and I was
You,
happy for the Dodgers. They put the ball in play. It was like, I felt a couple games the Yankees were just swinging for the fences, and that's not how you win games,
no,
because
small ball, small ball.
yeah, exactly.
Well, John, let's talk about you. You 15, 16 years sober now.
23 years.
23 years, my
Yes, sir.
mistake.
Yes,
23
sir.
years. A childhood that abusive father thrown into foster homes. My God, became a heroin mule. And if you don't know what that is, everybody, running heroin for dealers at 14 years old,
13.
15 years old. Your lifestyle, with the Cro-Mags, lead singer, which is, in my mind, just craziness in itself, which promoted a lifestyle that you were a part of. How the hell did you get out of that, John?
Well, to backtrack a little bit, we spent about 6 years in like one of the worst foster homes in New York. We were abused, myself and my 2 brothers, and on every, the craziest, most terrible things that happened to kids in these places that you hear about happened to us. And they shut the home down, and then they put us in St. John's Home for Boys in Rockaway Beach. And um, 75, I started going on to the streets. In 76, I'm sorry, when I was 13 still, and I started, getting in trouble out there and selling drugs and all that. And I split from the home, and as a kid in New York, and I just wrote a short film about that whole experience of what it was like to do that. And I took up with some very dangerous people because the only ones who would let me crash at their place was these heroin dealers, and they were like, "Yeah, okay, you got to go to Alphabet City and carry these bundles of heroin back for us, bundles like 10 bags." And so they would, they had their little gig going out there. So that's what I did at first. And that, one thing after another, I ended up racking up a bunch of cases, and I went upstate. I did 3 months in Spofford, which is, Mike Tyson talks about that place in the South Bronx. It's somewhere you don't want to go, especially if you're an Irish white guy from Queens. And I was the
Yeah.
only white guy in the whole facility. I had a target on my back as soon as I walked in there. I had to fight the first night up in the unit. I was in B3. And then I went upstate for 18 months. Actually got added on a few months while I was up there, and just to process everything that happened to us. I was always doing drugs and alcohol and all that stuff. Like, I mean, I shot heroin the first time at 13 years old. I lost my first girlfriend to an overdose, and when I got out, I never worked on myself spiritually or anything to try to heal up those issues that were there. So when I went into the Navy out of lockup, and I took all of that bad baggage with me to the Navy. And I was, selling drugs and doing drugs. I mean, this was 1980. They didn't do any like drug testing back then. So,
Right.
and then I caught a case. Somebody set me up, and I had a felony I sold like undercovers, like pills and cocaine and LSD, whatever. Just I was a garbage. I was a wreck. And but prior to that, I had met this band called the Bad Brains, right? And I got into because I used to go to punk shows in the '70s, the Summer of Punk, '77 New York. It was wild. Son of Sam, the Blackout, and I'm this 15-year-old kid raging on the streets. So the punk rock kind of grabbed me, like, wow, man, listen to these people's attitude and how they're just like, F the system and all that. So I kind of was like, yeah, I got raised by the system and they failed me. They allowed me to be in this place for all these years, being abused. Nobody cared. I just
So
felt,
this was like you finding another family.
well, that's what it was. It became my tribe, right? That's what I said was these people, the Bad Brains, and then the DC crew, Ian Mackay, Henry Rollins, who's pretty famous in himself. And I started going to all the shows and all this, and back up in New York and going to DC in 1980. And then when that case happened for me, they were like, look, my lawyer dude was like, you could be looking at 10 years in Leavenworth. And I was like,
Ugh.
some freak things happened. One thing, it was always like, I say my higher power, but somebody was always there, God, whatever you want to call it, looking out for me because I was in the brig on the ship and, I got this infection and they had to medevac me off the ship from out in the Caribbean back to Puerto Rico to Roosevelt Roads. And, just everything that happened. I'm like, if one little thing happened differently there, like me and you would not be having this conversation. Right. So I got back to New York and I started my music career. It was the Cro-Mags started in '81, and then the Bad Brains I roadied for, and we formed a band comprised of the roadies, and then we started touring all over the place, and it just got to be like I just felt, one of the things the Bad Brains said, because I was still taking drugs and everything, and they said, they were Rastafarians, so they were like, you can't do any drugs, you can't drink alcohol, and you can't
Ugh.
eat meat, right? So they were like, I was like, you got to eat ital, like vegetarian. I was like, I was living in burnt out buildings. I was like, yo, if you're going to feed me for free and I get to go see you guys every night, I'm like, I'll do whatever it takes. And I went on this trip with them, and my band opened up. We were out on the road for like a month. And by the time I came back, I was completely clean and sober. I didn't even smoke weed, and they all smoked weed because they're Rastafarians. And then, like, I just felt I needed to do something, and I started reading Prabhupada's books from India, and I said, I got to give this a try. So I was a monk from '82 to '84. And then I left the ashram and went back and reformed with the Cro-Mags, and then we went on the whole history and stuff like that, touring and playing with the biggest bands, and just like this poor kid. But the thing was, what year was the Iron Race?
1989.
Right. So prior to that, I had seen. So my uncle was from Italy, right, and he was really into cycling. And he used to. I used to go to his place in Queens in Astoria, Rocco D'Angelo, and we would watch the Tour de France. And then he's like, in like '85 or something, he's like, "Yo, there's this race on Wide World of Sports called an Ironman or something. It's this crazy endurance race." So I'm watching this thing, and like the emotional aspect of it, I just started crying. I was like looking at these athletes, everything, and they always do the little backstory on everybody and like
Right.
what they go through to get to the start line, and it was very emotional for me. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna do that race one of these days. I'm gonna do one of those races. And then fast forward 2012, my first coach, Orion Mims, who was a 10-hour Ironman guy, was like, I met him through the bike shop, Sid's Bikes,
This,
in
yeah.
New York City. And
Yeah.
yeah, my great shop. Thank you,
I
Mike. Those
know.
guys took care of me, Mike and the whole crew over there.
Yeah.
And he was like, yo, I have a chance to get you into the Ironman New York 2012. Like, and he was like, we're going to race for the charity and get in, And I was like, bet. so he trained me, and then my drummer who booked the band booked a huge concert for the Cro-Mags the day before the Ironman in Philadelphia.
Ah,
So
what'd
what
you
do I
do?
do? I
Yeah,
say I'm going to do it both. My brother drove me to Philadelphia.
of course you did.
Played to 3,000 people, like moshing, diving off the stage, the whole 9 yards. He drives me back to New York. No sleep. I got in the shower, and I got on the ferry up to the swim start, and I caught the last ferry. They were like, "You better hurry up!" And it was all the pros on that ferry. And I'm like, "Hey, you guys want some Vega? You want this?" They're like, "Who the hell let this guy on?" Like, it's like that nervous energy, but I was just being cool about it. But the pros, they all got their headphones on, and they're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I'm like, "Hey, man, I didn't know they were the pros. I just figured whatever." And then somebody's like, "Listen, you're on the pro, because we went all the way up, and the transition was T1 was raw stock,
Right,
so
right.
they drove us all the way up to that field we sat, and then we went to the barge and all that. But I literally caught the last ferry. I did the Ironman on no sleep with a stress fracture in my foot, and that was my first Ironman. And I just kept going from there. I was hooked.
Well, John, you're the lifestyle in the Cro-Mags and the punk rock. It's very physical, and I've seen pictures of you back in the day, and you were still buff. You looked like you went to the gym, but it had to be because you were in a physical profession,
Right.
among other things. At the time you were an addict and depressed back then, did you ever have in the back of your mind, like, you know what? One day I'm going to get out of this bad cycle, or I know I'll find something better. Was that, or did that just happen when you went on the tour to DC with those
Well,
guys?
what see that I was doing really well, and then the Cro-Mags really blew up, and one of the band members stole all the money at the end of the tour, and I
Uh,
just I quit. I couldn't believe it, and uh, it was a betrayal like nothing I ever had
mhm.
experienced, and it was from my best friend, so I quit the band. And then music was always the thing. Even when I was in the foster home going through all that stuff, I found a little AM radio in the garbage. And every night they made us sleep in the garage with all the garbage and tools. And I would just put these little, it was always, the little AM radio, and I would listen to all the soul music. And it was always music
That
that
kept you.
that always took me out of whatever bad stuff I was going through. I would dream about touring, and I didn't even know what touring was, right? In this foster home. So then when the band, everything that I had invested in my life for all these years, all of a sudden, like, to be betrayed by somebody I considered my friend, I just quit the band, and then I took up with some really bad people in early '88 New York, and it's when the crack was like really crazy. So my first freebasing experience was Miami, and that's smoking cocaine, and we went down there, and the guy had stolen a couple of kilos from the Cuban cartel. So we're in there freebasing for like 2 days, and then the guy was like, I'm leaving. I'm going to go to a hotel. It was the guy that I was running around with's brother. And he's like, you could stay in my room. So after like another day, he gives me a bunch of pills. This was the first time I ever smoked freebase. And all of a sudden, I'm passing out. And then I hear a car pull up outside of his window. And I hear two doors open. I hear the bolts on two AR-15s. And they just did a walk around the whole house, you know,
Holy crap.
firing, emptied two clips into the house, and I just rolled over on the floor. He had a waterbed in the room. It exploded. All the glass it was like something out of a movie. And it just went downhill from there. And for 2 years, I relapsed into like the worst. I had drug dealers putting KOSs on me, kill on sight. I
Sight.
was, because I was still working out. So I studied martial arts most of my life, and I boxed. So I was a very physical addict. I wasn't like if I wanted your drugs, I was going to roll up and take it from you. And I ended up having contracts put on my life. And I had to get out of New York. So I had a girlfriend in LA. I went out there. She was like in with the big Hollywood crew. And I was just robbing people, like rob the Chili Peppers, and, because they knew me from the music scene. And so it just the whole thing. And then what
John,
happened?
John, I
What
gotta
happened?
stop. John, do you think every day, why am I still alive?
Well, somebody, my friend read my book and he goes, "How the hell are you still alive?" The new
Yeah.
one, but the thing that got me, and this was the turnaround point. I believed in God. I stayed vegetarian the whole time. That was the crazy thing. Was
Wow.
I would go on a binge for 5 days and then wake up and be like, "Yo, let's go get some wheatgrass juice." And the dudes were like, "Wheatgrass juice?" Like, dude, you need to be in a straitjacket, like the stuff I just seen you do. And I maintained my diet, which is insane. And I
That's
would
insane.
always say a prayer, like, and just pray to take me out of this stuff. And so finally, I ended up coming back to New York from LA. We sold her car. We got the FBI caught us at the airport, and I got away. And I ended up in a crack house that night, and I was cooking up my cocaine, and these dudes came behind me with like a 2x4 and just split my skull open. I woke up, they took all of my stuff, my money, everything, and I basically was just homeless. I had burned every bridge. I had people looking to kill me. I went in Tompkins Square Park. There's a holy tree in there where Prabhupada first came, and I just sat there, and the waterworks just came on, and everything just came out from my childhood, everything. And I said, if you don't help me right now, I'm going to die. And I went to the Sunday feast at the Krishna Temple in Brooklyn. I said, please let me stay here. I need to get off drugs. And they had heard about all the stuff that I was doing because, word gets around. So they said, you can stay. You have to get up for the programs. You got to do yoga. You got to do all this stuff. You got to get a job, and you can't do drugs or anything like that. I said, great. So that was and then I started studying with Ron Van Cleef, the Black Dragon. I was a bike messenger, which is how I got into cycling initially in 81 because I was AWOL. So I had warrants. I couldn't use my social security number. So the only job I could get was a bike messenger. So I'm bike messengering with Nelson Vales, if you know who that
Yeah.
is.
Oh, yeah.
He
Yeah.
made it to the Olympics, and
Yeah.
he was like, him and a couple other guys were like, I was riding a woman's Panasonic, and they were like, if you get a good bike, dude, you could be crushing it. And then we do these crit rides at night in Central Park. So my first bike was a Nishiki Modulus with the BioPace crank, the egg-shaped crank,
Yeah.
with all like Shimano 105 on it.
Yeah.
Like, and I was in with the Cuevas Bike Shop, the Andreas Paco. They were frame builders. That's how I met George Hinckaby when he was a kid. So, and I got in with the whole cycling crew in New York. And, I just went back to that. I went back to what I knew and I worked as a messenger. I trained every single waking hour in 1990 was spent either meditating, praying, reading, doing physical activity, working. And I even relapsed a couple times over the years, but then in 2000, I said, that's it. I can't, I was partying because it's New York, and I'm like, they let me in all the clubs, and I'm dating this model. We're taking ecstasy. We're doing all this mushrooms. And I just said, like, somebody's going to break out a bag of Coke, and I'm going to be right back to where I was. I got to quit everything. So I'm going on 24 years now. I lost my younger brother 2 years ago to addiction. He was a disabled veteran. And, it was tough on me. It was in the middle of me writing that book, Destroying Monsters. And when you had a drug habit, that's what they called it. Yo, he got the monster,
Monster.
like, so that's why I called it. And it's just those thoughts in our head, those negative thoughts I see as monsters. They're always trying to take us down. And, it's mindset. Ironman is a mindset. And that's Ironman that's helped me, and the Ironman community and the stories that I hear. And I mean, I did Cairns Ironman, and this guy was a veteran. He had both his legs taken off in the war, and he like when he came out of the water and everybody carried him. I mean, I still get goosebumps. We were crying,
Yeah.
like the stories that like the year that. NBC. I was in T1, and I was putting my helmet on, and it was when I did 2016, and I just broke down, crying because I'm like, I can't believe these foster people told me I'd never be nothing, and
And you were in transition. You were in transition,
the
and it
camera
hit you.
came on me, and they said no doctor can write a prescription for this, and I was on NBC,
Hmm.
and it was like it was deep, and that's my community. That's my tribe now because like the stories of all those people and everything they go through, cancer. Did that year that I made it on NBC, that was the year the guy had cancer and had to get a heart transplant. He said
Yep.
my Ironman journey started from me getting out of my hospital bed and crawling to the wall and standing up.
Brad Fitzgerald. Yeah. You. So many people I've talked to, John, and the stories I've had the honor to be a witness to. When someone goes through addiction or bad times in their life, sometimes you hear people say, well, they just went from one addiction to another addiction because some people look at Ironman, well, that's crazy. Or you're running an ultra, or you're running a 100-mile race. What are you doing? That's just another addiction. How do you answer people like
You
that?
know what I say?
What?
If you're not, there's a negative there's always a negative connotation attached to the word obsession, right? But if you're not obsessed with something, you're going to give it up. And that's if you talk to Goggins, like we were talking about David Goggins and my friend AJ James, who's like, and all these other Jeff Groom and all these other frogmen and all these people that been through hell and back, it's like they were obsessed with what they were trying to do, right? And to me, I'm like, yeah, you could say I did replace one addiction with another because I did. But guess what? The addiction, what I'm addicted to now, has at 62 years old, I'm in peak condition. I've got 6 books out, working on the seventh. I just finished a short. I coach people. I feed the homeless in New York City. My day is consumed with positivity. So if you want to say that that's negative, well, then that's on you. That's your perception of what I'm doing. But here I am. I'm doing another album. I'm going on tour. All of this was a result of that Iron Man motto, anything is possible. I never let anybody tell me that I couldn't do something because it's like Orion, thank you. It's like Orion Mims said. The guys at the bike shop were like, sometimes you get these jocks, they get into Iron Man and it's like those are I don't really gel with those people, and they were like, well, maybe you should try to do. It was my first attempt at a
Okay.
triathlon, and they were like, maybe you should try to do an Olympic first, or try to do a half Ironman. And my coach, big African American dude, boxed at Gleason's, just a specimen, right? Orion Mims, look him up. He
Ah.
says, with everything this dude has been through in his life, Iron Man is a walk in the park. Shut your mouth. And that was it. And I'm like, and to me, it's just it's the camaraderie. It's the
Yeah.
friends that I've made through Ironman, and my coach. I met my coach Samantha Murphy from Evolve Coaching Systems, who is the brother-in-law of like my best friend who worked at the record label and put out my books. He's like, you should work with my coach. And then I meet her, and we did that Iron Mind thing together with Brian Rose from London
Road.
Rio. I don't know if anybody, but she was the coach in that. And here's this amazing, beautiful person, single mother, she just got all these write-ups like that. She took her business from like just something that she did just to help people. And now it's like a successful coaching business, Samantha Murphy. And it's just like everybody. And then like Dr. Rick Ritchie, and Aaron, my guys who worked on me and stuff like that. And, they gave me the Normatec boots, and like, it's just like you meet all these incredible people. And I put out a book called The PMA Effect, Positive Mental Attitude. I read it from Napoleon Hill, and it was like just so much positivity. So if somebody wants to say, oh yeah, you replaced one, you're damn right I did. And look at what I'm doing at 62 years old. I'm drug free 23 years. Ironman did that for me. And my spirituality, chanting and meditating, but it puts you, I have a coaching business, right? And my whole thing is discipline, because I say discipline creates the habits create the routines become who we are. And everything about Ironman is to be regulated. You have to be extremely disciplined to be able to, train and coach and live. And you still got a life. We're not pros, we're age groupers. So we have a life that we have to also balance and maintain aside from doing our training. That's why I love that the pros will sit there and come and wait for the last age grouper to come in, because they show the respect and we give it to them too. I just watched Kona last weekend. Oh my God. It's like I watched the whole race from start to finish.
Yeah, it's something else. And I love the analogy you said. If you don't have an obsession, you're going to quit. And obsession is good, channeled positively, which you're doing. And let me tell you, Ironman New York, your first one, when I was there announcing, they had this sound ordinance at the finish line, which I didn't know about.
Yeah.
But I think it was like 9 or 10 o'clock. BCC Dave Downey said to me, Mike, you gotta go lower levels. You can't go as loud.
Yeah.
I go, what are you talking about? So I started putting it down, and then we turned the music up again. Well, they came and they shut us down about 10 o'clock. You've been a man with a microphone. I've been a man with a microphone.
Yeah.
And I stood at the finish line, shaking hands with everybody, yelling
I went up and grabbed your hand. I was like, I am shaking this dude's hand.
Well, I woke up the next day, John. I couldn't even move my hand. It's like I did 1,000 push-ups or pull-ups, but It was well worth it. Well worth it.
If you remember about that race, that's why you always have to prepare mentally, because at the athlete briefing, they were going to cancel the swim because the Terrytown sewage treatment plant released like 2 million gallons of raw sewage into the Hudson. So it was going to be just a bike swim. And that almost took the wind out of my sails. And then, and I'll tell you something else. There was an athlete named Ken Rideout. He's gone on to become a world.
I know
Ken is my friend. So I'm going to tell you something about him, right? And this is what I mean about this community and why it's so special. So Ken used to box at Crunch on Lafayette, and 5 Points Muay Thai was up there. Frank Grillo, the actor, was up there. All these like legit dudes, right? Brian Callen boxed there. And I used to see Ken come in there and he'd be like whacked out on pills, but just like banging the bag. Like, I'm like, he's a Boston guy. He'd be like, he's friends with Dana White and the whole crew. And just like but you could see that he was high. And then all of a sudden, Ken Rideout disappears. I don't see him. I'm like, man, I hope that guy went into treatment. I'm on the barge ready to jump in the water. Guess who's standing there? Ken Rideout. And we hugged each other so tight. And he qualified for Kona that day.
Yeah.
On his first Ironman.
I remember Ken. So
Ken's breaking world records right now in endurance marathons through the Gobi deserts and all kinds of stuff. Yeah. He does the podcast with Teddy Atlas.
Yeah, exactly.
The boxing guy, yeah.
So after you did your first Ironman,
signed up for Cozumel. I'm signed up for Cabo.
Yeah. Tell me why. All of a sudden you go, this is mine. This is what's going to keep me whole.
That's it. Because I said in the Vice thing that came out, if you Google Vice Vegan Ironman, they followed me for Boulder. when I did Boulder, and they followed me, my cooking, my spiritual regimen, like what I do on a daily basis. Like they shot me at a Cro-Mag gig in Philly, and I said in that documentary, I said, it's either you're going to be one and done, or you're going to get the bug and say I'm signing up for the next one. Well, thank God I got the bug, because I signed up right away for Cabo in 2013, and it was on St. Patty's Day. And I'm down in Cabo. It was a full Ironman, which they don't do the full anymore.
No, no.
And I start seeing, I'm praying for my brother Frank. I hope he pulls through. On Facebook, I called up my brother. I'm like, what the hell's going on? They're like, we didn't want to tell you. Frank's in a coma from addiction, and the doctors don't think he's going to live. So I had to do the Ironman with that on my mind, that my brother's going to die. And I raced for him that day. I cried my eyes out when I crossed the finish line. And I just prayed all day that I got my nose broke on the swim, and I'm leaking blood, and that's shark water down there in Cabo. And they were like, yo, the safety crew was like, we got to pull you out of the water. I said, if you come near me, we're going to fight, guy. And my brother pulled through that time. So, and then I just kept going. I just won Ironman. I did Taiwan. I did Texas. I did Australia. I like the travel aspect of it too. Like being able to travel and go somewhere and meet these people. Like Brazil's on the radar at some point, Fortaleza, and I have a great friend up here, Nelson. He's like the most incredibly positive Brazilian Ironman dude. Actually, I did Maryland with him, and I tore my hamstring like 10 miles into the run, and I didn't finish that day, but I was cheering him on, hobbling like, "Let's go, you maniac!" And
well, you got to check out Ironman New Zealand too. That should be on your bucket list.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorites. It probably is my favorite.
I hear it's a beautiful, beautiful race.
It's just the people are pure.
Yeah, I love
and
the Kiwis. From touring, I always met. I've been to Australia. I never played in New Zealand, but the New Zealanders came over to Australia to see us, and I'm always meeting Kiwis, and So I also want to do like Roth Challenge and one of these just because of the crowd. It's like I got to experience that.
Good for you.
But it's just, I just keep busy every day, man. And I keep God in the center of my life. My faith is in helping humanity. I'm going to be feeding the homeless over here tomorrow. We do plant-based meals. So the person who I'm at right now is, he does interfaith community services. So it's like all people from all walks of life. It's non-sectarian. We go out and we feed the homeless like these beautiful organic vegetarian meals, like cooked with spices and just like really well prepared. And, we'll do a few hundred plates and feed everybody. And he plays mantra music and everybody's talking and just, it's a beautiful experience to help the community. And, just like Ironman, right? Ironman community, when I was supposed to do Florida that year with the hurricane hit, and then they moved the race to Haines City, and I did the race up there. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to go back to Panama City and clear out people's houses. But I know the Ironman Foundation did that. So,
it's been that's one of my most positive experiences with Ironman, being the Ironman Foundation ambassador and being a part of those give backs, because when Ironman goes into a community, it takes a lot away. It's a strain on a community. You got 2,500 athletes running around, closing roads and everything else. And it's a beautiful thing for the Ironman Foundation and us to be able to give back. John, on the book you wrote, especially Destroying Monsters, your latest one, do you think that's the biggest form of therapy you can do for yourself?
Absolutely. I mean,
and by the way, more power to you. You and I are both self-published people. I love being self-published.
Well, I studied under Robert McKee, the screenwriting teacher. If you saw Adaptation, the movie with Nicolas Cage, Brian Cox portrayed my teacher, and he nailed the performance. So Robert McKee wrote a book called Story. His 3-day seminars are legendary. So I was writing this script, and it was based on my childhood about a kid, because I was really into boxing. I almost went down that same road with the fighting, like my dad, and who was a professional fighter and just was messed up, and I waited every class. During the classes, you take these breaks, and Mr. McKee would like smoke cigarettes outside. He was like, he loved his stogies. He's an Irishman, like cursed like a sailor. Hilarious though. Like, so I waited for everybody else to go back in, and I go, Mr. McKee, in terms of a protagonist who was abused as a child, he stops me right there. He goes, McGowan, child abuse is the number one cliche used by bad writers who write flat characters that an audience could otherwise not give two shits about. So they throw some child abuse in there and they try to gain some empathy for the character. It's not what happens to that character, it's what they do as a result. And the light bulb came on because I was trying to write my memoir, and every time I got to the sexual abuse crap that was done to me and my other brother, I would just break down at my computer and I would shelf the book for months on end. I couldn't get over this hurdle. And when he told me that, and he wrote in my book, because he signed my book Story, in the beginning he wrote, always write the truth. And that was the epiphany that I needed to get that memoir, Evolution of a Cro-Magnon, to get past that hurdle and open myself up. So that was my therapy. I never went to therapy. When I was locked up, they had me seeing a shrink. They put me on Thorazine meds. I was like this violent dude in the prison system, like just fighting everybody because I had all these anger issues of what was done to me as a kid. When I got out of that foster home, I said, nobody's ever putting their hands on me again. I don't care what I have to do to destroy that person. If they're bigger than me, I will annihilate them. That's the mentality you had to walk around on the streets of New York with back then. And I had those anger issues. So when I was incarcerated, they made me see a shrink. The Navy made me see a shrink. And that's why I got the time bomb tattoo. They said, this guy's a time bomb waiting to go off. That was my psychological evaluation, right? So I always had this anger, and it wasn't like I never saw a therapist. I never did any of that. All the work that I did on myself was spiritually. I became a monk for 2 years. I read, I meditated, I exercised like a beast, but it was still that one, like, I never cauterized that wound properly. And anytime, the thing that always triggered it for me was when somebody betrayed me, because I was betrayed by my mother, who admitted, she left us in the foster home because her boyfriends didn't want us around. I was betrayed by the foster parents. I was betrayed by the system. I was betrayed by my girlfriend. I was betrayed by friends, band members. So that was the thing that always set me off and to a relapse or whatever. So it wasn't until I wrote my memoir, The Evolution of a Cro-Magnon, that I was able to finally get past all that stuff. That was my therapy that I did for myself. And I stayed by myself for 4 years. No girlfriends, no nothing. I practiced 100% celibacy. I was doing yoga. I just really needed to go on this internal spiritual journey and cleanse, destroy the monsters that were taking up all this space in my head, and, for years. So,
John, when you were doing all that for a lack of a better phrase, self-therapy, self-help, did you ever keep thinking like, you know what, this is the path that's going to work for me? Or did you have doubts about that? Because John, not everybody can go down that path and say, I'm going to cure myself. I'm going to go become a monk. I'll be celibate. I'll do all these things that are tough to do because I think it's going to heal me. Did you really truly believe that whole time that
no,
that
I was just living. I was just trying to survive another day. Like I never went to a drug program either. But what they say is, I love the philosophy of working the steps and all the sayings that they have, one day at a time. And for me, that's all it was. And I just watched like a high level SEAL. Oh, you know who it was? It was O'Neill, who's he's the one that took out Bin Laden, right?
Oh, the
Team
sniper.
six guy, and he goes,
Yeah.
Buds is all about this. You make it, you get up, you brush your teeth, you do your bed, you do this. That's a few victories. You make it to breakfast. That's a victory. You make it. So that's the same thing with me. I just wanted to make it through another day. I didn't think about, like, I never sat there with the luxury of being like, yeah, I'm doing this and I was just like, I got to do this today. And I like, what I always tell people is, if you're caught in the past too much, you're gonna be getting depressed, right? If you're looking ahead too much, then you get anxiety. What's the future gonna bring? We don't know. None of that's guaranteed. Stay in the moment and live for today. We have today. Today's a gift. There's a lot of people that didn't think they weren't good. They didn't think yesterday would be their last day on the planet. So if our eyes open in the morning, the first thing I do every single morning, I touch my head to the floor and I say my mantras. Om, Namo Om Vishnu Padaya, Krishna Pastaya, Bhutale, Shimate Bhakti Vedanta. I give respect to my spiritual teacher, to God, to Krishna. And I immediately start to try to roll with positive energy. Okay, who sent me an email? How can I help this person? What can I do today to be of service? Because it's bhakti yoga, and that means the yoga of devotion, yoga of
Devotion.
service. So that's I read Bhagavad Gita every day. I just even when I was going through all that self work, it was not like I had the luxury to be like, yeah, this is where I'm gonna be, blah 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 blah. I was just like, let me just survive today and not get high and not get killed.
Well,
That's
that's
it,
the,
it
the
came
old
down to like it came down to like the rawness of survival. And when we wrote songs like Survival of the Streets in the Cro-Mags, and I'm sleeping in burnt out buildings with no windows in the early 80s, with gang members coming in trying to take the building from us to make a drug spot, and I'm fighting these guys off. I'm showering in the middle of winter at a fire hydrant, and then going back upstairs, getting on my bike and bike messengering for 8 hours a day to pay for the Cro-Mag rehearsals and recordings. That's determination. That's what it takes. That's why, I just fit naturally into that Ironman puzzle. It just was like, this is the next thing. And I encourage so many people, my clients that I have, I tell them, look, man, challenge yourself, set up a challenge, set up a goal, set up something that's going to challenge you. Don't float through life. Don't float through life. And, whether it's a 70.3 or an Olympic, or you try to do a marathon, whatever it takes.
something,
You know what it
something.
is? The people that you're going to come into around that whole community of athletes are going to be the people that are going to be your anchors in this world. Like, they have a term in Sanskrit called Bhakta Sangan, and it means the association of spiritually like-minded people, right? And I look at Ironman as a spiritual process to me, because people are digging deep. They're getting to the core essence of who you are to be able to do something like that. You even saw what the pros went through. What's his name from France that he cracked on the run after the fastest bike time? Sam.
Sam Laidlaw.
Yeah, dude. And I'm like, I got so much respect for him
Oh
because he
yeah,
finished that race.
yeah.
Even though he was 18th, I'm like, I love you, man.
See,
Because
what
you
people
have the
don't,
spirit of
yeah,
the Iron Man.
he does. And John, what people don't realize is, sure, he's a talent. He went sub 4 hours on the bike in Kona, but then he was faltering. He was slowing. Can you imagine the mindset of a pro and mentally what he had to push himself through to get to it wasn't
Dude,
about
I
physical.
was tearing up, man. I was
Me
tearing up
too.
because
Me
I've
too.
been there. I've been sick. I've been sick on Ironman courses. I've DNF'd on Ironman. Like, I did Florida 2 years ago. People don't realize like what the struggles that it takes. And the pros are all great and the fast guys are really great. But the guys that are out there on course 15, 16 hours, man, battling battling, battling their mind and everything they went through. And it's like,
I call them, they're the Ironman of life.
yeah,
Of life, because they're going through things that others are never going to go through. And the best part about it is they show their actions speak louder than their words,
yep.
which
Well,
is
Robert McKee says true pressure is only revealed under pressure. The greater the pressure, the greater the revelation of true character. So that's what it's all about. Everybody can put on that mask. That's the characterization. I'm a tough guy. I walk around, all tatted up. Don't mess with me. This, that, these people that have that mindset. But that's the characterization. The true character comes when they're put under the test.
yeah,
And
exactly.
that's why I constantly try to test myself, and I try to urge other people to do it as well. Like I'm doing Texas for tunnel to towers. I'm racing for. I'm
Oh,
going to
good.
raise. I set a goal of 25K to raise for them. They help disabled veterans. 95% of every penny that they raise goes to the program, not administrative costs.
It's
They
a
have the
great program.
highest rating of any charity.
Yeah.
And I have so many people in the military, family, friends that were injured, or first responders in New York that gave their life on 9/11, or were hurt on the job, or got cancer from working on the pile for 3 months. I mean, the work that these guys are doing, I'm like, so it's
Hey,
always,
John, do you know, it just hit me. Do you know Matt Long?
I
You
know that
know,
name.
yeah,
From,
Matty Long. He was the firefighter that was crushed by the city bus during the bus strike back.
I do. Yeah, I do. I do. I remember
Yeah.
the story that came out about him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He lives in Rockaway now, and he
Yeah. So he knows my
amazing.
buddy Jimmy Brady because Jimmy Brady was rescued too in Brooklyn, and Jimmy
Mm,
Brady's a 9 hour Ironman,
yeah,
and he
yeah.
got hurt on the job about 4 years ago. He, like this is where
It's a
none of
hard.
this. What color are you? What's your this, that, the other? Your religion? None of that matters in Iron Man.
No,
None of it matters on the battlefield, and none of it matters when you see these first responders. Jimmy Brady ran into a flaming building because he heard, and it was African American kids, and he heard there was kids trapped. Those guys ran into that burning building, and the whole front facade of the building came down on him, and he almost died. And one of his guys did pass away, but he's been trying to come back from that now for years. He had to have all these surgeries on his neck and his spine, and like it's just
well, if
this.
you talk to him, wish him well for me, okay,
Jimmy Brady, I love you,
Brady?
man. He's like
Yeah,
he's like he's like a third brother to me, man. And his father Dennis is like this amazing firefighter. And when Sandy hit Breezy Point, they had like
mm,
10 feet of water in there. And I was working with Team Rubicon, the veterans
veterans. Yeah,
organization, and I was out there feeding people at St. Francis de Sales on 128th or 29th was the FEMA center, and I was feeding. We set up and we were feeding meals to all the people, and I got to work with the Team Rubicon people. So it's just like, yo, my whole thing with everybody is this is what I always say, man. Be around good people, be around positive people. We have a term for the other people in New York. We call them crumb bums. And I try to stay away from those negative people because like you're gonna take on the qualities of who you associate with, and I just try to hang on to like all these positive people I meet through Ironman or all the other endeavors that I
that you
do,
do.
and it's
John,
just been
uh,
a blessing.
are you in a relationship now?
Yeah, I've been with my girl. I don't know how the hell she put up with me, Erica Mitchner, for going on 12 years now.
Good.
I did a running event through Nike, and it was in LA, and all these people signed up. And LA's famous for like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and then everybody flakes. So there was
Yeah,
only
yeah.
like out of all the people that signed up, her and another guy were the only ones that showed up. He couldn't make it to dinner. So I said, "Hey, we're gonna go to Real Food Daily and get let's go out to dinner." And she was just the most fascinating, beautiful person. She studied in Japan. She has 2 black belts. She's a trainer, like just this amazing person. And after having dinner with her, I walked her outside and I said, "I swear to God, Mike, I'm not kidding." I go, you're going to be my woman. And she goes, really? I go, yeah. And she wouldn't date me because she knew my band. And she's like, I don't date guys in bands. I was like, listen, man, I'm going to prove it to you. I'm not just like trying to get some groupie. I'm not into that. Like, so I went all the way out. She was training these really wealthy people in Santa Barbara that lived next to like Oprah Winfrey and all that. And they gave her the back house, and she was their trainer for all these wealthy ladies. So I went out and I spent the week with her in LA, and I was like, yo, and then we just fell madly in love, and we've been together we've been together like going on 12 years. We rescued a pit bull about 6 years ago. Big guy, man. Rottweiler pit bull, 100 pounds. And my girl says, we rescued him. He's your soul dog because they kept you locked up in a dirty garage, and they kept him locked up in a dirty basement of a building.
You found your
my
your
soul
soulmate, soul dog. You know what I like best about? Well, I'm sorry. What's her name?
Erica.
You know what? No, I like best about Erica, 2 black belts, because she can probably kick your ass, and I love that.
The first time I said to her, I go, because I fought, I just been a brawler fighting on the streets. I trained with Ron Van Cleef, and I was the only white guy. So when it came to sparring, it was all the Puerto Rican guys and black dudes trying to take my head off, and I kept coming back. I had a black eye. It came back, right? So I said to her, so you're a black belt? And she goes, and throws this side kick up and just holds it there over my head. I was like,
okay,
wow. I'm not. And I always try to do stuff like, because, she's really fast. And like, if you try to take her down, she's like,
it's too fast. Yeah.
Oh my God. And she's strong as hell too. So
see, remember, you're an endurance athlete. Those fast twitch muscles we used to have, they're gone.
Yeah.
They're gone. So John,
like,
yeah.
I know there's been a couple of races, and she's like, if you didn't finish that, I was just forget it. You would have been sleeping out in the garage.
Well, John Joseph McGowan, my last question on Find Your Finish Line, I ask everybody. It comes out of I call it tri-table racing. It comes out of the Baja 1000. I've got friends that race the Baja 1000 in these trophy trucks, and I've sat second seat in them. It's intense. But afterwards, they get together and they call it table racing. They sit down at a table, they reminisce about the race or about a previous race. So I call this tri-table racing. So reminisce with us what comes to your mind about an event you did or something that happened during that event. Just reminisce with us and tri-table race.
So, I mean, there's a
lot,
but I have to say, first time I did Kona, this Navy guy that was stationed out there knew about me, and he went on the stretch Alihi Drive going to the finish line, and he wrote PMA with the big lightning bolt like the Bad Brains on the street. And it was the most amazing thing to me because I always would walk down by the water and meditate and pray the night before the race at the finish line and get the visual. So after I finished that race, and I ran by you and all that, I went over by that PMA sign and I just put my head to it and I just kissed that ground, and everybody was just so amazing and and then she said to me, don't ever ask me to come to another one of these because it's so intense.
It's so hard on you.
Hawaii thinking it's going to, she went and did her thing and did her little vacationing things. But yeah, she said to me right after the race, don't ever ask me to come to one of these again. I was like,
heard
babe, I said, babe, it's Kona. I've been waiting 30 years to do this race. So it was special because you were here.
Well, I've had a lot of partners and spouses tell me the same thing. I loved what my wife just did, or my husband did, or my son. But I'm going to Maui next time. They can come here.
Yes, the Xterra you got to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, John, this has been a pleasure, and I've been following you for a while, and I wish I had you on the podcast sooner. But the one thing that because people ask me why I wrote my book, and I thought it'd be selfish if I didn't share stories with people of stories that inspired me. And that's why I do this podcast, because I want people to be able to move forward. Who knows who's listening to this right now? And if we touch and turn around one person, we did our job for today. And you're a big part of that, John. So thank you very much.
Takes. And I was honored to come on. I mean, I've watched you calling in. You know, I've watched it on NBC, and now with all the online stuff, you know, I watched you for years, and it's just been like amazing, you know, to shake your hand at those races and to hear your voice and the positivity that you give to all the athletes. And, you know, you always brought a sense of humor to it too. And that's what I really liked, you know.
Well, I'll give it to you one more time because you're a good man. John Joseph McGowan, you are an Ironman.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, John. And thank you, everybody.
Sir. Yes,
sir. You got it. Thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of Find Your Finish Line. Check out Pillar Performance, my presenting sponsor. And always remember, you're the cause of your own experiences. If you keep those experiences positive, you will always find your finish line. Aloha, everyone.
Mahalo.